Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with a new video, and that is that I'm going to be talking about my 2024 knitting plans, basically all summed up. Then I think at the end of this video I think it will be good to do just a little bit of a talk about some general goals of mine, but then also a change of plan for my knitting in general. So maybe that's going to be a knit and chat. I think that would be really fun. So I will save that for the end because I know not everybody is interested in that, and also maybe not my personal life and stuff. That's all that I have to say, so we can get started with the video. The first sweater that I would love to knit is the Celeste sweater by Petite Knit. I actually already have this one on my needles currently, and it has been super fun so far. All of the color work that is in it is color work. And that is just super helpful and so much fun to knit. And I'm saying helpful because I feel like it's very easy, especially for beginners or people that don't have a lot of experience with color work like myself. Then color work is really good because you can do it with two hands. So in one hand continental, and then in the other one you can knit English. And I find that very enjoyable and very engaging way of knitting. Now I do have something to say about that I'm knitting a petite knit pattern, and that is that I kind of try to avoid it. And that's because I don't want to be one of many. Not that I need to be unique in any way, but I just feel that everybody knits petite knit and everybody talks about petite knit. And I just feel like it's a bit much, and also with the fact that there are so many other smaller independent designers that make great patterns. For example, if you really like color work, I would really recommend the Petite Knitter. And then I also have two other patterns on my queue right now that are My Favorite Things Knitwear. And I think My Favorite Things Knitwear and Petite Knit are both designers that I kind of try to avoid. Also with the fact that they are both not the most size inclusive. For example, the Celeste sweater, I looked and it goes up to a 5XL, which at first glance you think, oh that's great. But then it actually has a finished bust measurement of 160 centimeters, whilst a 5XL that actually should just be the bust measurement, so without the ease. So it's not good enough for a huge company like this to be releasing patterns that aren't size inclusive. That was a little tangent, so now we can continue with all the other patterns. So speaking of My Favorite Things Knitwear, the next pattern that I really want to knit is from My Favorite Things Knitwear. And it's a jacket number 1. And I just really love the fit of this design. I love the garter bumps or pattern that it has going on. I do think it's quite simple, so I could probably come up with something similar or find a similar pattern or design. But I'm just not sure yet. I haven't really found anything. I was also thinking of maybe knitting the Aria cardigan by Russ Knitwear. And I think she's also really a pattern designer that I would like to support more this year. She recently talked about pricing in the knitting industry and how basically everything is priced too low, and there's a expectancy that patterns are a certain price point. So then when something is higher, then we're confused and we don't want to pay that much. And I actually really recognize that behavior for myself, because I usually pay between 5 and 10 euros for a pattern, and then sometimes I see a design that I like that is above 10 euros, and then I think twice about buying it. But now actually, whilst I'm developing my own patterns, I'm really starting to see how much freaking work there's involved in getting a pattern out there on the market. I would say that making a knitting pattern is equally or maybe even more time consuming than releasing a sewing pattern. So then it's super interesting to think about that a sewing pattern is generally 10 euros, but a knitting pattern is not. And yeah, just some food for thought why we don't want to pay as much for a knitting pattern as for a sewing pattern. Also for this year in general, that I would really like to knit less and knit more intentional. And with that I think also comes supporting more independent designers with higher prices to support their work and show my love of their design. So for that cardigan or jacket, I was thinking this yarn. I think I'm gonna come up with my own design, but I'm still gonna show you anyways. I was thinking the Novita Merino 4-ply, 2 strands of this, held together with this gazelle kid mohair, and I think these colors match really well. I was looking for a color merino to match this mohair for so long, and I was really happy to have finally found it. It's a very warm chocolatey brown, but really with a reddish undertone. So it's a very interesting color. And I think this would make a very cute cardigan and super wearable in my personal wardrobe. Then another sweater that I would like to make is the Bonnie sweater by Sandnes Garn. They actually have two versions of this design. One I believe is just with a thicker yarn, so it's a bigger needle. I think maybe 5mm needles. But the one I'm looking at is with mohair, and so it's knit on 4mm needles held together with a merino. And it's all over cables, which I really like. And that really inspired me to also make it in pink. So this is again the Novita Merino 4-ply that I'm going to hold together with long yarn Zen, which is a really beautiful brushed alpaca type of yarn that has some silk and merino in there as well. But also I have to say that yarn combinations like this, just a merino with a silk, it can be used for almost any pattern. So honestly, a lot of these patterns that I'm naming are probably going to change. And just now, whilst I'm filming this, I don't really like my list anymore. Because like I said, I want to support smaller designers, so I think I'm just gonna go and randomly talk about other patterns that I really like. So for the jacket number 1 of my favorite things knitwear, I was also thinking about knitting the sweater number 18, which is a very popular design with also the pearl or garter design on top. But then I actually found a pattern that is quite similar and that I like the fit of better. So maybe you also would like to know about this pattern. I think it's called the Chouquette Sweater, and it's knit in a worsted weight yarn on 4mm needles. It comes in 6 different sizes, which goes up to a 150cm bust. So that is again a big downside, because 150cm is not size inclusive. But if you do fall within the size range that they have here, it's a really nice pattern. Then another pattern that I think is really pretty and I think very wearable is called the Louise Pullover by Lisa Woolrich. It's knit on 4mm needles with a DK weight yarn. I believe for a sample it's knit in cotton, but I would definitely knit this in a more woolly yarn. And it's an all over bubble sweater with a raglan sleeve. Then this year I would really like to knit with a new technique. And this technique is called inlay colorwork, which I've never done before, but I really like the 3D texture that it gives. So one pattern that, for example, I really love is the Moonlight Meadow sweater by Melody Hoffman. It's a circular yoke design, and I believe it does not have any short rows, or does it? It does. It does have short rows. 90cm to 170. So finally we have a size inclusive pattern in here. Thank you, Melody Hoffman, for doing that. I'm gonna check out her Reverie. Then another knitting goal of mine is to knit my first pair of mittens or gloves, because I've never done that. And I actually found a free pattern on Revelry that I really love the design of. It's actually a matching set, so it's a pattern for a bubble scarf and some gloves, but these are fingerless gloves. But I saw on the Revelry pages that a lot of people just made them as gloves, and I think I'll be able to figure out the decreases. I'm guessing it's similar to socks. So I'm hoping that I can figure it out. So like I said, it's a free pattern, so you don't have anything to lose. Then another designer that has really been on my mind lately is Mipi Makes. For example, her Sarah cardigan is very beautiful. And it's knit in a sport weight yarn on 4mm needles. And it goes from a size extra small to a 5XL. So now we're gonna check how much that is. And this one is great. It goes from 110cm to 180cm. Finished bust circumference. Then another pattern that I really love is the Doppio sweater, and it's knit in a bulky weight yarn, but she knits it with multiple strands held together on a 6mm needles. I think this would be a really great sweater for yarns that you have in your collection and you're not sure what to do with. You can just hold them all together and make this sweater, because it's kind of supposed to have a emerald look. It goes from 89cm to 171cm. With a suggested ease of 5 to 13cm. So this one is size inclusive, which is really appreciated, of course. And the thing that's really interesting about this sweater is that maybe at first glance you think it's just a regular raglan sweater, but it's not, because it has a compound raglan, which is supposed to really improve the fit of the sweater. I've never knit a compound raglan, but I'm really intrigued and interested by them. So if I were to knit this, that would also be a nice tick in the box. So for the knit and chat portion of this video, I'm just going to knit on my Sophie shawl that I'm still working on. I'm honestly a little bit bored by it at this point. but I'm just going to continue it because I'm knitting this more out of necessity. Because I really need a scarf and I think it's cute. So I just need to, you know, finish it. And of course I like knitting, so it's not like it's a bad thing to work on it. But yeah, some things that have been on my mind lately is definitely, well, the prices for knitting patterns has been on my mind. That we should be willing to pay more for our craft. And I know not everyone is able to do that. Me, myself, is not really able to pay a lot for knitting patterns. I often think, well, I only paid X amount for the yarn, then I don't want to pay this for my knitting pattern. If there are cheaper alternatives out there, it's just as simple as that. But I think if, well, a lot of designers were to make this step together, then it would be a lot better. The only thing that is not really nice about that is that sometimes you buy a pattern and then you're disappointed by it, so you don't really end up using it. So then it's definitely a waste of money if then a pattern is also more expensive. So then you also maybe only start purchasing patterns from designers that you know and trust, and where you know that you will like the finished object and the pattern and their writing style, because everyone is different in that sense. Since this year I really want to focus on releasing my own knitting patterns, I've actually felt a little bit of a change towards knitting. Not that I don't enjoy it anymore, but I do feel a little bit of pressure in a sense that I like to knit other people's patterns, also to show here on my podcast and stuff. I don't really want this to be a channel where I'm only showing my own design. But honestly, knitting your own designs takes a lot of time. And also I'm sometimes just more inspired by my own design than somebody else's pattern. So I would like your thoughts about that. And then also there's definitely a little bit of a pressure to knit a lot and produce the pattern super duper fast. To be able to, of course, make money and grow your account or following or whatever. So that also has me thinking about what is a sustainable or natural amount of knitting patterns to produce in a year. Is it once a month? Is it twice a year? Just two whole different things. I'm not sure yet, and I think I'm just gonna go with the flow and then see where that gets me. But I do want to be more intentional about my knitting this year. I felt like last year was kind of my knitting comeback, is how I called it. I didn't knit for probably, well, I still knit a little bit, but definitely not like I knit last year. I basically, in 2022, I had one knitting project and that was it. And then at times I didn't touch it for months on end, basically. So 23 for me really was my knitting comeback, and I think that really got me overexcited to knit just all of the patterns and try out all the yarns and just knit as much as possible, and to replace all of my sweaters that I had in my closet with hand knit sweaters, which in hindsight was not really realistic. So for example, this sweater I didn't knit myself and I just bought it because I needed something that was not hand knit and for warmth, of course. I just think last year I just was not knitting with a lot of intention. So one of my goals for this year is to also knit less. I think I would like to make probably 10 items. I'm hoping to make 10 items. And for me, I know that sounds a lot for probably other people, but for me that would be really good and like a lot less than I knit last year. Then I also have some personal goals of mine that I want to share. And I saw some people on Instagram doing an in and out list. So I've made a little list like that, and it was really helpful actually. So like I said, more intentional knitting. Then I want to use higher quality materials, so I'm kind of known to use a lot of drops yarn, and there's nothing bad with that. And it's definitely what is in my budget. But then I was thinking, if I knit less, so if I only knit 10 items instead of 30, then I will probably also have more budget for each project. So for example, I would really like to knit with Knitting for Olive this year. Also because they have recently been certified as sustainable, which I think is really important. And they pay a fair wage throughout the entire production line, and it's really a brand that I would like to support. Of course, with drops, their ethics are a little bit questionable because it is so affordable and you can't really find a lot of information about it, which honestly, that means it's not very good usually. Then I would also like to only work on things that bring me joy and passion, and that also kind of comes with my business. I think I mentioned it on my channel already that my business was not doing well and I was not making enough money, and that kind of led to me basically looking for things that were safe. So things that I knew would sell, and sewing things, which I basically said that I would stop sewing clothing, but then I started and I stopped and I started, and it just went on and on like that. And I was only doing it because I thought people would buy it and then I could survive till the next month. And not because I wanted to and that I felt a lot of passion and joy for it. And honestly, for releasing knitting patterns and sewing patterns, I feel so much more joy and satisfaction from it. And I really want to follow all of these feelings this year and that passion and drive and just see where it gets me. It may go well and it may not. And I think I'm finally willing to risk it all and just see, yeah, where life takes me. And the next one also comes around in that, and that one is quite difficult to say, but it's also believing in myself and just seeing where it takes me. I feel like I'm quite harsh on myself and I don't really believe in myself. I often feel like people think that I'm very proud of my business and everything that I've built in 2 years, and being able to quit my job and work on it full time. Of course, I can, when I say it out loud, I can see that, yeah, that's something that you should be proud of. But am I proud of it? No, I'm not. I don't feel proud of the things that I've achieved. And I probably should be. And I think I just need to, yeah, believe more in myself. But it's really difficult. Then some things that I don't want to do this year anymore is also comparing myself to other businesses and people. And I don't really do this with knitting or seeing how much other people have knit or anything. And I would just see other businesses shipping out 100s of orders every week. And then I only got 1 order. And it made me feel like shit. It made me feel like I wasn't good enough. It made me question myself and think, why is it working for them and not for me? It brought up a lot of feelings of jealousy, and I want other people to also be successful. But I almost felt bad that they were successful and that I was not. And it's not a nice feeling. So this year I also want to stop focusing on numbers of likes and followers, which has already proven to be quite difficult because I actually reached 2k on Instagram because one of my videos went a little bit viral, and it was very exciting, and it was very difficult to not feel joy about reaching 2k followers because it can mean a lot for my new venture into knitting patterns. But then again, it also doesn't really matter. And you can have just as much success with 100 followers as with 1,000 followers. You just need to get your customers to see you and to really like what you do. And I know for a fact that it doesn't matter because I have another account where I have 12,000 followers, which I think is a, well, significant amount, at least for me. And I probably had more messages and orders and everything when I had 2,000 followers on that account. Like, it just went down the more my followers grew, and now I'm only losing followers. Then another thing that I want to stop doing is bringing myself down for mistakes. I also think that, like I said, I'm just really harsh on myself. So when I make a mistake, I'm just the worst person ever to be around. And I'm in my own head, so I have to be around myself. And then I just get in a huge negative spiral, and it makes me extremely depressed when I make a significant mistake. And it's so stupid because mistakes are natural and mistakes are something that you can learn of and become better. And if I were not making mistakes, that would be weird. But still, I have this feeling that I need to be perfect, I cannot make mistakes. Also, I want to say that I know I have a lot of issues, but I am going to therapy. And I was also going to therapy last year. And this year I'm going even further into therapy, and yeah, so just so you know that I'm figuring things out also. And then my last and final goal goes together with the therapy, and that's to tackle my anxiety. I'm still kind of anxious about traveling. It went well for quite a while, but then I got anxious again, and then it's just so easy to avoid the things that you're anxious about and not do it. But then your anxiety only grows and grows and grows because you're avoiding it, which I have been doing. So I really need to get back on it and tackle my anxiety and not be afraid of traveling and crowds and all of those things. I think that's everything that I wanted to say in this video. I do really hope that you enjoyed all of the patterns that I showed you in this video and that it at least gave you a little bit of inspiration. This video was definitely a little bit different than how I would usually go about it, but nonetheless, yeah, different is not necessarily bad. And then also this knit and chat is also different for me, so I hope you enjoyed getting to know me a little bit better and all of my 99 mental health issues that I have going on at the moment. And I really hope to see you in my next video, which will just be a nice knitting podcast. I will show you all of the updates and progress that I have made on my whips. Hopefully this one will be finished by then, but I'm not making any promises. And if you want to keep up to date with all of my knitting patterns or knitting pattern releases, test knits, I would suggest following me on Instagram, because that's where I will be posting all of those things. And that's all that I have to say. So I will hopefully see you next week. Bye bye!